Hi, welcome to another edition of Metropolitan Sports Radio. So, it's been a while since our last broadcast, which was before Christmas, on the 13th of December. A lot of moves have been made in baseball season. Basketball pace has picked up and about halfway through the season. Like, focusing more on baseball for now, there's been quite a, as I said, a lot of moves have been made, so we won't have enough time to cover all of it today. So we'll focus more on the Mets and more recent moves and of the free agents left. There are quite a few big ones still out there, including Yoenis Cespedes. But so the reason we're gonna do this is a lot of analysis have been gone into previous signings that have been made. Probably like a few weeks ago. More time has been given for them to make more analysis. You guys can read them online. But the more recent signings, less, a little less analysis. Um, the signing just went off. Maybe it's nicer, give it some time, and maybe the analysis would be better and more. It 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 just it would be more critical. It'd be more accurate than when people take a step back and look at it when time is given. So that's probably why giving more recent trades. We'll probably have some more views on it that are different from the experts so far. And of course, going in on the Mets, who have not made the splashiest of moves. And I've filled in quite a few areas, but it's not been what Mets fans have hoping for. And of course, the Wilpons heads um, are being called upon again because a lot of Mets fans are calling for the league to force them to sell the team and so forth and whatnot. But it is what it is, and we'll see how this team does, Dad, with the current players that they have. Your thoughts, Dad?
Well, let's quickly review what the Mets have done this offseason, Jamie. So they've signed a second baseman to replace Daniel Murphy, who refused the qualifying offer from the Mets. And Murphy, somewhat surprisingly, signed with the Washington Nationals. So the Mets will get a first round draft pick, compensatory pick from the Nationals. Instead of signing Murph, the Mets' first choice was to sign Ben Zobrist, who of course helped the Royals win the World Series last year, and is probably one of the most underrated players in baseball. Super utility player, played mainly second base last year, and one of the highest wins over replacement players in baseball. Great on base percentage, also a great defense player and can play lots of positions. But unfortunately, the Mets, although they made him the number one target in the offseason, lost out to the Cubs. Um, Zobrist wanted to go play for Joe Madden, whom he used to play for. So unfortunately, he went to the Cubs, but the Mets recovered quickly and signed Neil Walker. I think this was probably a good signing for them. Walker only has 1 year on his contract, which is a big theme for the Mets as they're looking ahead to having to re-sign their pitching staff as the pitching staff approaches free agency over the next sort of 3-4 years out. They don't want to have a lot of dollars tied up. Neil Walker, probably slight improvement over Murphy in defense and in power, although Murphy is transforming himself into more of a power hitter. We'll see how much the playoff power will translate next year. But Walker certainly has been a more consistent power threat historically and a slightly better defender. So I think overall the Mets, maybe improved slightly in that position, which is good. And they only have to give Walker a 1 year deal instead of the 3 year deal that Murphy got. Plus they get a draft pick back. The second deal that they made, I don't really like. They signed Cabrera to play shortstop after having given Ruben Tejada a $3 million option. So now they've got Flores, Tejada, and Cabrera at short. Cabrera will be the starter. Problem with Cabrera is he's not a good defender. And actually, all three Mets are not great defenders, though Flores is actually been improving his defense, and I think he'll be actually a pretty good shortstop. Although it looks like the Mets are going to put him in a super utility role coming forward. Cabrera's got some pop, can run a bit, pretty good on the offensive side of the ball, but reliability on defense. One positive of the move is that Flores will be able to spell David Wright at third base more often, and who knows how many games Wright will be able to play next year. Third development was that surprisingly Michael Kadire announced his retirement, so that actually gave the Mets more money because he was owed $10 million this year, and basically became a reserve, and had a terrible game in the World Series, and was basically put on the bench and didn't really play. And so I think Kadire, being an all-star in the past, his pride said it was time to go, and probably a good thing both for him and for the Mets that he was willing to have some sort of buyout. But as a result, the Mets still have a hole for right-handed hitting first base reserve to back up Duda, and also for a corner outfield backup. And it'll be interesting to see who the Mets sign for that. We'll talk about that in a little bit, right, Jamie? The fourth signing that the Mets made was for Diazza. Again, I put this in a disappointing category. Diazza is probably best served as a fourth outfielder, although I think the idea is to have him platoon with Juan Lagares to be the lefty side of the platoon. So that might be somewhat interesting. Diazza certainly hits righties a lot better, and so maybe that platoon will work out. Diazza's got some speed as well, which the Mets lacked last year, but his on-base percentage is not great for a guy with his speed, and he's not a big bat. He's an adequate defender in center, but we're certainly hoping the Mets would make a bigger splash for center fielder, perhaps with a Denard Span, who was signed by the Giants. But the Mets were concerned about Span's health problems or health history. Or Dexter Fowler, who's still out there, although Fowler's a righty, so wouldn't have been the right platoon partner. Or someone like Parra. Has Parra signed with the Rockies? Is that confirmed? He has, huh? Okay. So Parra actually would have been a great signing for the Mets. But again, they went the cheap option. Diazza only required, is it a 1 or 2 year deal?
One.
1 year deal.
To check.
Whereas Parra would have required probably 3 years. Parra is clearly a better player than Diazza, so disappointed the Mets went the cheap option. And also by signing Diazza early, the Mets seemingly have given up on Cespedes. Interestingly,
1 year,
Cespedes,
5.75.
okay, yeah. So it's again the common theme: the Mets only want to give 1 year contracts out. So Cespedes is still out there, which is really surprising. The market for outfielders after Hayward signed early on in the hot stove with the Cubs, spurning the Cardinals at a huge number. What did he get? Like $200 million over 8 years. We thought that would spur the market, but actually, Alex Gordon ended up going back to the Royals for less than people thought. And Denard Span got a reasonable deal from the Giants. And then Parra signed with the Rockies. But Fowler's still out there. Justin Upton, the other big bat, is still out there, and Cespedes. And for the Mets, they've got the corner set with Conforto and Curtis Granderson. So they need a center fielder. So the Mets fan base has been screaming for Cespedes. So what do you think about that, Jamie?
Cespedes on a short term. I think if Cespedes were to go for a short term deal, it'd be for 1 year. And
they need to give him what, 20-25 million for 1 year, something like that.
But as weird and unlikely that sounds, him taking a short term deal, what? But it's becoming more and more of a reality.
Mm.
because the market was still to develop, and of course this year's free agent market was so shallow, was so deep that a lot like Justin Upton and Yoenis Cespedes, they just left out dry hanging. Where next season the free agent market is rather shallow. Best outfielders would be Jose Bautista and Cespedes. If maybe he signed with the Mets, a short-term deal, 1-year deal, could go and test the market again next year. Maybe better chances, but yet again you have to remember that his age, of course, is a lingering factor,
Mm-hmm.
and he's already 30, 31, 30.
30, yeah.
30. So if he goes on, plays another season, 31, who knows what, a whole year older, who knows what teams would want if teams are willing to pay him to play long term anymore.
Well, the Mets' thinking on Cespedes going into the hot stove was that he wanted a 6-year deal, 130, 140 million plus, and that the Mets were never going to commit to one guy that much. And Cespedes, 30, be 36 at the end of that contract, and certainly not a great center fielder. He's a fantastic left fielder, and if the Mets had a hole in left,